Things have value when they are rare. A diamond will always be a diamond because it's a rare mineral. Once upon a time in Shaolin, it's a marker for our times. It's a rare item. And tonight you'll get a chance to get a small glimpse of it.
We all know and love the Wu-Tang Clan. Straight out of the slums of Shaolin, even the biggest mumble rap fan of the modern day will have a hard time downplaying the influence of the OG Wu Squad. Throughout their career, they've put out some iconic music projects. And sure, some of their later releases were a little bit more landfill than gravel pit, but it's undeniable that as their cream got old, mouldy and stale, the innovations that the Wu-Tang Clan brought to the game continued to permeate and influence the culture throughout hip-hop at large. And I know that nowadays a Wu-Tang Clan release is hardly the most anticipated event on the hip-hop calendar, but in my opinion to this day there are still very few projects in modern music as exciting, interesting and innovative as the rare one-off Wu-Tang Clan Once Upon a Time in Shaolin album. I know what you're thinking. God damn, you know the Wu-Tang fell off when they drop an album and only sell one freaking copy. But Once Upon a Time in Shaolin is unlike any other album ever sold. Now there's competing narratives out there about the origins of this album. So let's start off with the official RZA approved narrative. The album started its life all the way back in the late 2000s, under the production guidance of Dutch Moroccan Wu-Tang affiliate Silver Rings. But don't get it twisted, this isn't the kind of penis removing Wu-Tang affiliate that the RZA would rather forget. Silver Rings is the real deal. Having been pulled on stage by Method Man and ODB at a Wu-Tang Clan concert in Amsterdam all the way back in 1997, Silver Rings spit a freestyle and eventually ended up impressing the RZA, who invited him to be an official affiliate of the Wu-Tang Clan in 1999. This actually made Silver Rings the first non-American affiliate of the Wu-Tang Clan. Back in my day, we didn't have all these foreigners in the Wu-Tang Clan. Arrgh! Anywho, after spending around 10 years touring the world with various Wu-Tang Clan members as an opening act, Silver Rings dropped his debut album I in 2007. And to his credit, as a producer and rapper, he was truly able to capture that vintage, enter the Wu-Tang sound, and the project really did sound like a true Wu-Tang Clan album. And it even featured guest appearances from the likes of RZA, Ghostface Killah, Raekwon, Method Man, The Jizza, and even a voicemail appearance from Pharrell Williams himself. Possibly the only voicemail that Pharrell has ever left to a rapper that didn't include the words, "We're being sued, homie." So it turned out that Silver Rings was a master forger when it came to replicating that authentic vintage Wu-Tang Clan sound. Now unfortunately, being able to perfectly replicate vintage Wu-Tang Clan beats is about as valuable as a commodity in modern day hip hop as a verse from 50 Tyson. However, many years later, him and RZA would dream up this ingenious plan to use some kind of clout-based alchemy to convince the world that their dollar store Wu-Tang knockoff album was somehow worth 7 figures. A genius move that in order to work would need to capture the imagination of the public and one rich asshole. And apparently Once Upon a Time in Shaolin had humble beginnings in life, initially being a Silver Rings organized traditional Wu-Tang Clan affiliate compilation album rather than an official Wu-Tang Clan group album. And as such, when recording took place throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s, all of the members were paid upfront for their contributions to the project on a verse-by-verse basis. But to be fair, what's the going rate for a U-God verse these days? 16 cents? Let's be real, I probably could have bankrolled this thing with change from behind the couch.
Let's see what we got here. What's that, like 50p? That's Trinidad James verse right there.
And this Untitled Wu album began to take shape and evolve over a long period of recording, around 6 whole years. During this time, Silver Rings would make Wu-style beats for RZA's approval, and oftentimes during sessions, Wu-Tang members would come in and rap over different beats that Silver Rings would replace later in order to avoid leaks, and story goes RZA didn't even get a personal copy of this album.
The recordings, they weren't allowed to have. They had beats sometimes that actually had beats that had a similar sound, but wasn't the actual beat. I mean, it had the same BPM, the same speed and everything, but they would rhyme with something that would sound much later, because I just couldn't afford for it to leak. And they were never given the final copies, including RZA.
Okay. Now the fact that the recording for this project was going on for a while was well documented, but the part that's actually up for dispute is how and why the one album concept came about in the first place. The official story goes that Silver Rings and RZA were together in Egypt, finessing private night tours of the pyramids when inspiration struck.
In 2004, we both traveled to Egypt and spent 2 weeks studying its remarkable history. We were fortunate enough to have a very well connected guide who managed to get us access to the Giza pyramids after closing time. We sat down to overlook the desert, and I said to RZA that one day we should do something special together that would last through the ages.
They imagined making a piece of music that would stand the test of time just like Pyramids had. That's the actual Pyramids, not the Frank Ocean song Pyramids. Hey, and who knows, in 1,000 years' time, maybe Vitaly TV will be treating that Wu-Tang album just like the Pyramids, climbing to the top of it and sucking on some boobs to promote his porn website. Anyway, from here they came up with the idea of taking a Renaissance approach to putting this album out there. And rather than mass producing it, they would develop the entire album as a one-off art concept, much more at home in a museum or gallery than in the CD changer of a 35-year-old stoner's Ford Fiesta. We're talking about the kind of art that Damien Hirst would create. But instead of a dead shark suspended in a jar full of liquid, it's the dead careers and verses of 90s rappers suspended in a steel case. RZA and Silver Rings have also claimed to have drawn inspiration from Nipsey Hussle's Crenshaw mixtape project, which was also a limited press run where albums were being sold for $100 a piece. So they'd be dialing up that concept all the way to 11, literally only producing one copy of that entire project and making that a very valuable commodity. But just in case I haven't quite made it clear enough, here's a supply curve for all of my A-level economics gang. Just a heads up, this video is probably going to be quite business heavy, so get those notebooks at the ready, people. Now, in order to preserve the value of this work as a one-off piece of art, the sale of it would have to come with some unique conditions. First off, the sale of the album had a stipulation that whoever bought it couldn't commercially re-release it for a period of 88 years. Oh, well, I guess it turned out that Wu-Tang's actually for the great-great-great-grandchildren. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the album could never be played, toured, or heard by the public for 88 years. The real purpose of this clause was actually just to present the commercial release of the album and preventing a record label from just buying it and releasing it within a few months of its sale.
If we would allow retail and commercialization and reproduction, this thing would have lived on as a work of art for 10 months and then become a standard CD. Talking to some art specialists, they said, well, if you're going to sell this as an art piece, you actually you can't transfer the copyright. It's like a painting. You own the painting, you own the canvas, the brushstrokes, but you're not really allowed to take pictures of it and sell them as postcards. The image copyright remains with the creator.
However, one of the more eccentric terms that surfaced around this time was the Bill Murray clause. When the album hit headlines, rumors began to circulate that the contract had a bizarre clause that allowed members of the Wu-Tang, and for some reason actor Bill Murray, to steal the album back from whoever bought it as part of a one-off heist or caper. However, sadly, for all of the fans and I suppose Bill Murray, this clause was later revealed to be nothing more than an internet hoax. But it turned out that Bill Murray-related hijinks weren't the only misinformation spreading about this project. Some of the Wu-Tang Clan members whose contributions had been featured on the project begun to feel hard done by about having been kept in the dark about the specific details of this art project. And so these tensions and the subsequent fallouts interestingly begun to reveal another alternative origin story of the album, suggesting that perhaps a slightly bigger finesse might have been at play. Now, once the album was completed and the concept was revealed to the public, some members of the Wu-Tang Clan were pretty pissed off for various reasons. RZA actually claimed to have kept members in the dark about what they were recording their verses for. He'd also pointed out how difficult it had been to knowingly wrangle all of the members together to contribute to the other Wu-Tang Clan album release, A Better Tomorrow.
I think the secrecy of that project allowed it to be fulfilled. I think the openness of A Better Tomorrow is giving me a stumbling block. Most people, if you offer them medicine, they won't take it. You know what I mean? You gotta put it in their food.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that the Cosby method, while effective in getting people to take drugs that they didn't want to take, doesn't necessarily leave the trick party with a very nice taste in their mouth. And so some members, already moaning about RZA's dictatorial tendencies when managing the group, begun to vent their frustrations at the head honcho of the clan once the unusual terms of the sale came to light. Method Man came out in an interview saying the fact that people couldn't hear the album for 88 years was stupid and fuck that album, and it turned out that Raekwon agreed.
Shit, 88 years is a long fucking time, B, you know, but you know, that is a long time and shit. I mean, that's a long time for people to be able to hear. Like, that means we won't be around. And
in response to this, RZA came out publicly to clarify in more detail that that 88-year clause meant that the album could not be sold, but it could still be heard by the public, potentially. And in response to this, Method Man went back on the Huffington Post to walk back some of his comments, but still admonishing RZA for not being upfront with the clan about the details of the deal.
Because I had no idea. I was, you know, if RZA had been on point as far as keeping us in the loop with the album, that probably would have never have happened. Those answers would have never came out that way if I had had a clear conversation with RZA on what was going on.
Fellow member U-God later sounded off about the fact that he hadn't been paid for his contribution to the album, suggesting that he was going through a forensic auditing process to find out if and what he was owed for his contribution.
I'm not in a lawsuit. I'm more or less, right now, I'm in a forensic audit.
Okay.
Trying to find out what's going on.
What you're supposed to have financially.
Basically.
Oh, because you never got broken off from that sale.
yeah, I want to see what's going on.
U-God went on to point out another reason that members were annoyed about this project, not necessarily just because they'd been kept in the dark about the nature of the album, but the fact that Silver Rings and RZA had been getting verses from different members from the Wu-Tang Clan piecemeal, a move which apparently many members felt was tricking them into recording a group album.
Yeah, this dude Silver Rings, who was real close to the group at one time, as RZA's little minion, whatever you want to call him. And he just said, got verses from here, and he put it together. And I mean, you know, if you do it like that, it came out kind of chunky.
Apparently during the recording sessions, the crew members were operating under the idea that their verses were for a Silver Rings project that was intended for a European release. And right here is the detail that RZA and Silver Rings apparently don't want you to know, because it's very possible that this album might have just started life as another Silver Rings and RZA compilation Wu-Tang album. And this is actually corroborated by the fact that Silver Rings had made several public posts that were since deleted on various Wu-Tang Clan forums that he was involved in, discussing a Wu-Tang Clan compilation that he currently had in the works, with some Wu-Tang fanatics who were also active in those forums claiming to have heard a version of this album as early as 2013. And some Reddit sleuths have even taken this internet conspiracy a step further, writing off the entire Once Upon a Time in Shaolin project as a Silver Rings Frankenstein project. They went as far as to suggest the entire Pyramids in Egypt story was complete cap, dreamed up to mythologize and increase the perceived value of what was essentially a bargain basement Silver Rings compilation project that no record label would actually give him the money for. Apparently both Ghostface and Method Man openly disliked Silver Rings, describing him as a B-class member of the Wu-Tang extended family who was constantly trying to release projects under the flag.
Can't stand Silver Rings, by the way. It's something about, and I don't like to say B Wu-Tang artists, those that B level, those B level dudes, but you're not RZA. You're gonna pay us for our labor. Paid us for it. It wasn't no Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, and it was just, you know, records here, get on this record. Then it turns into Once Upon a Time in Shaolin. Then it turns into a piece of art and the whole thing. And yes, I'm discrediting Silver Rings, but I'm not discrediting the product. I'm just discrediting him and the way he made his move.
Well, Meth, you did get paid, so you should kind of shut the fuck up. Ultimately, it's unclear how much truth there is to this conspiracy theory that the members were tricked, and that Silver Rings couldn't get a label to release his compilation, so he dreamed up this genius finesse. But to his credit and his defense, Silver Rings claims to have called up every single member of the clan to explain this concept to them individually.
To every clan member whom I called once the idea was kind of set, it took an hour or more to really break it down. That's not because they didn't get it, they got it, but they couldn't see the greatness of it, or the importance of it, rather, until they had the whole picture.
We can never necessarily know the whole truth, but in my opinion, even if this version of the narrative is completely true, the fact that Silver Rings and RZA were even able to salvage this Frankenstein project and come up with this one-album project purely for the sole reason to finesse an enormous bag in exchange for a bunch of unwanted off-cut tracks, only makes me respect Silver Rings more as a master finesser. But regardless of all of the conspiracies and all of the pissed-off members of the Wu-Tang, the album's been made. There's only one copy, it's very rare and very valuable. But the whole finesse only functions if you can find one big fat sucker stupid enough to fork over millions of dollars for this album. Initially, the album was set to tour museums, galleries, and festivals on a ticketed basis before it was offered up to sale. But eventually, the tour idea was scrapped in favour of immediately auctioning it off as a rare and collectible piece of art to an angsty billionaire. You know, the type of thing that would be perfectly at home on Jeffrey Epstein's dungeon wall. And so, when the album was done, RZA and Silver Rings went on a mini press tour, unveiling the album in Marrakesh, where it was being held secretly at a hotel, inside a box, inside a box, inside another box, like some sort of Shaolin Russian doll.
Here we have the box.
All right.
It's a box within a box within a box.
The moment of truth.
Now this has been carved in nickel silver. We decided to encase the world famous logo of the Wu-Tang Clan within this beautiful pattern, treat it as an art piece, which it is. With inside you have another box, and inside this is encased the CD with its special sawn casing. But for security reasons, we've taken it out. So today, what you see is just the actual artwork which houses the CD.
In the run-up to the release, RZA said the album was as rare as a Picasso.
This is a piece of art. It belongs in an artistic, in an art setting, a venue, a museum, or a gallery. And it's as rare as any Picasso.
And RZA really wasn't capping about this thing being more at home in a museum, because him and Silver Rings turned up to the Museum of Modern Art to run an exclusive pre-sale listening event and Q&A showcasing the album.
7 albums, 9 members, 22 years, 36 chambers, 40 million sales from one island, Staten Island, from one man, the Abbot, RZA. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Paddle 8 is proud to partner the Wu-Tang Clan to forever etch the clan into the canons of contemporary culture.
But the crazy thing is, this nearly didn't happen, because prior to arrival, apparently Border Control spent 3 hours trying to determine what the contents of this locked box were. I kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, how could you possibly try and fly with a case full of such bombs, bangers, and fire? At that event, only 13 minutes of the album were played under strict conditions, which to this day is still the only ever official public playing of the album. And while several small leaks and snippets do continue to do the rounds on the internet to this day, there's still little more than 30 minutes of this project in circulation. And 30 minutes is basically nothing, because this album is a beast. It's 31 tracks with a runtime of over 2 hours. Shit's so long it might as well be one of my videos. Every member of the Wu-Tang Clan features on the album, along with several members of the extended Wu family, as well as 2 appearances by Cher.
It's not just the Wu-Tang Clan, every member on here.
I heard a voice at the end in the last track. Was that a Wu-Tang?
Well, that wasn't a
Was
Wu-Tang
that Blue Raspberry?
Cher?
Yeah.
Cher.
That was Cher.
Cher.
Yeah, Cher. The Cher.
Wow.
And if that wasn't enough rare Wu content for you billionaires looking at buying this thing, that famous case is accompanied by a leather-bound book which features 174 pieces of parchment paper detailing the backgrounds of all of the songs. And all of that source sits in an ornate box designed by British Moroccan artist Yaha, with artistic design that RZA has described himself as the illest cover in music history.
That's a really intense box set right there.
I think that's like the illest album cover in the history of music. You know what I mean? In the history of the world, the illest package right there, yeah.
Well, he must not have seen the cover for Kevo Money's last mixtape. That shit is fire. Though I've got to say, it's kind of a pisser that underneath all of this mystique, all of this shine, the CD does just sit in a regular ass jewel case. But regardless, RZA and Silverings pressed on with the sale, hiring online auction house Paddle 8 to sell the album to the highest bidder. And that listening session and Q&A at the MoMA was really RZA and Silverings' opportunity to trot out the album for potential rich buyers. But who would possibly want such a ridiculous hip-hop collector's item? Initial speculation pegged connoisseur of hip-hop music and uncomfortably gratuitous user of the N-word Quentin Tarantino. Another suspect was the VC boss man and author of cringeworthy rap quote Laden's startup self-help books, Ben Horowitz. Hell, even the weathered 70-year-old virgin Richard Branson himself was expressing an interest at buying the album.
I love the idea. I mean, I think anything that people can collect as collector's items, it makes life more fun. And I expect it'll end up being the most copied single copy of an album ever.
However, on November the 24th, Paddle 8 announced that they had finally sold the album for a multi-million-dollar figure. And although it wasn't Richard Branson, at least it was a man that looks like a virgin, going to, at the time, a little-known pharmaceutical executive and future super douche, Martin Shkreli. Right, now I know a lot of the old heads in the audience aren't going to want to hear this, but in many ways, Martin Shkreli is actually more hip-hop than the Wu-Tang Clan themselves. You know, ultimately the Wu-Tang Clan are just a bunch of kung fu nerds that have some nice bars. And if the media are to be believed, Martin Shkreli is a true supervillain out here in these streets finessing tens of millions of dollars. And I know a lot of people are looking at Shkreli's pasty face and his childish demeanor and assume that he is just another spoiled rich brat that's inherited money. But the truth actually couldn't be more surprising. He's actually the son of working class immigrants from Albania and Croatia. His mother is a janitor, a job that she was still doing way up to the point when Shkreli was appearing on The Breakfast Club in 2016.
My parents, to this day, you know, my mom still does that. She's making 50 grand, you know, it's not a privileged family.
He attended Hunter College High School, apparently dropping out in senior year with enough credits for a diploma and enough charisma to land himself a lucrative internship. Strangely, this was with Jim Cramer, who you might recognize from CNBC's Mad Money.
I was a hedge fund manager, and the city had a program where you could hire interns. Poor kids from the city of New York. So I called us, I'll take an intern.
Hey, good to see Louis C.K.'s back on his feet after that wanking scandal. They're the same guy, right? Apparently Shkreli was already making a name for himself as a questionable hustler way back then. Apparently first getting a reputation for serenading Jim Cramer with sexy guitar solos.
I played guitar for Jim Cramer to win his Where's Fancy?
But aside from shredding acts in the boardroom, he also got a name for himself at the firm by suggesting biotech stock shorting opportunities to senior members of the firm. Specifically, a company called Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, who was supposedly developing a weight loss drug that Martin himself thought was complete bullshit. One of the partners at the firm decided to take Shkreli's advice, and it ended up going so well that the SEC actually decided to look into the trade. That inquiry was eventually dropped, and by that point, Martin Shkreli was beginning to get a reputation for himself as a master pharmaceutical stock shorting. And he clearly had a knack for this, so in his 20s he set up his own hedge fund short-selling biotechnology stocks. Initially under the name Elea Capital, and later starting another firm called MSMB Capital, which I believe understands for Martin Shkreli Major Ball Bag. And if you don't know, short selling is essentially making a bet that the price of a stock is going to go down. If you think a stock sucks, rather than investing long and actually buying that stock so that it goes up, you can buy a short position in the hopes of profiting when it goes down. And it's that same thing people keep doing to Elon Musk at Tesla. Apparently Shkreli began to get a reputation for himself by encouraging the prices of stocks that he was shorting to go down by talking shit about them on stock gossip websites such as Seeking Alpha. A strategy bound to get him a few corporate ops in the boardroom. And I know you're supposed to hate this guy, but every time I hear one of these little weasel moves he makes, it just makes me love him a little bit more. He's like a white-collar 6ix9ine. And so after what seemed like a few years of success, playing the markets on the sidelines of the biotechnology business, Shkreli realized that he could make the big bucks launching his own biotechnology firm. Now it's worth noting that this is actually quite an unusual move in finance. Spending years bashing an industry in short positions, and then switching, taking a long-term position in that industry by setting up your own company. You know, it's kind of like somebody talking shit about rappers their whole career and then trying to kickstart a music career. Oh, it's worth a listen though. So in 2011, Shkreli started his own pharma company called Retrofit. They had a novel strategy of buying obsolete old medicines, then repurposing them as treatments for rare and obscure illnesses. This is something he did with a drug called Chenodal, originally used to treat gallstones, but able to be repurposed to treat a rare and potentially fatal disease called CTX. But along with his legitimate business dealings, he once again proved that he's more Wu than the Wu-Tang Clan by apparently running around the internet with various biotech gangster rap alter egos. By the start of 2014, Retrofit was getting listed on the NASDAQ through a reverse merger with an already listed company, likely a multi-million-dollar finesse for Shkreli. But subsequent wild price increases led some people to question the future long-term prospects of Retrofit. But apparently his investors believed in him and his obvious hustler mentality, with one even saying he would only leave his money with Martin if he promised not to get a girlfriend and continued to not comb his hair. Shit, you're gonna want to invest $100 million when you see what sort of haggard mess he's become in jail. Anywho, all of this hot, sweaty business chat aside, you might already have been informed of Shkreli's dark past as that rich famous asshole that raised the price of a drug a bunch. But at the time when he bought the Wu-Tang album, he was just a regular, unknown, rich asshole looking to flex on everybody. So at this point, he's a little eccentric, big in the drug game, and got deep pockets, but hasn't yet become the ratty Dr. Evil we would all later know and love him as. So with that in mind, one important question remains. Why would anybody spend $2 million to get their hands on a one-of-a-kind Wu-Tang album? And so, as is hip-hop these days, and like many of the other stories on this channel, the answer is very simple. Clout, baby. Apparently Shkreli had been buying up a lot of celebrity memorabilia from the same auction house Paddle 8, including Kurt Cobain's Visa card. And whilst he wasn't initially interested, once Shkreli realized that the album would attract celebrity attention, he was in. However, the beautiful cosmic irony of this entire situation is the fact that in between buying the album and his identity being revealed as the buyer of the album, Shkreli already became famous for something else.
One tablet of Daraprim used to cost $13.50. The drug maker recently increased the price to $750.
Good morning. The increase drew protests in the medical community from those concerned that many patients will no longer be able to afford the drug. But according to Turing CEO Martin Shkreli, the move is simply a smart business decision.
Yes, when Shkreli was ousted from his drug startup Retrofin for reasons that we're going to get into later, he started a new business called Turing Pharmaceuticals. This was essentially a similar business, and it was launched with the acquisition of several drugs that he got from his old company Retrofin. This included a ketamine nasal spray which is bound to revolutionize the house parties of South London. But the star drug for the company was the newly acquired Daraprim, an old drug that had been approved by the FDA way back in 1953. The patent for this drug was expired and no generic alternatives were available at the time. But literally the day before recording this, apparently it was announced that a generic one is going to come to the market, so who knows what's going to happen. Now at the time, the drug's most popular use had been anti-malaria and an anti-parasitic application for patients suffering toxoplasmosis, sometimes from complications relating to AIDS, sometimes not. So upon acquiring this rare and frankly not very useful drug, Shkreli's company implemented a tightly controlled distribution chain and famously implemented a 56 times price increase, taking it from $13.50 a pill all the way up to $750 a pill. And this naturally attracted a lot of negative press at the time, from the likes of the HIV Medicine Association, the drug lobby, Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, irrelevant alcoholic and easy election loser Hillary Clinton, relevant old man Bernie Sanders, and some guy named Donald Trump who I actually haven't even heard of.
Where this young guy raised the price to a level that's absolutely ridiculous, and he looks like a spoiled brat to me. You want to know the truth?
Now, the media backlash following the announcement of the price hike was fierce, and Shkreli trotted out to various mainstream media news organizations to try and defend himself.
Why was it necessary to raise the price of Daraprim so drastically?
Well, it depends on how you define so drastically, because the drug was unprofitable at the former price. So any company selling it would be losing money. And at this price, it's a reasonable profit, not excessive at all, where there hasn't been one pharmaceutical company focused on it for 70 years. We are now a company that is dedicated to the treatment and cure of toxoplasmosis. And with these new profits, we can spend all of that upside on these patients who sorely need a new drug, in my opinion.
Congress even subpoenaed Shkreli and made him appear in front of them, where he masterfully pled the fifth to every single question.
On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question. On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question. On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question.
Hang on a minute, I swear I've seen this before.
Is it true you were a crack cocaine dealer for 7 years? I plead the fifth.
And my God, is there nothing that undermines the credibility of the Congress of the United States of America than the fact that they couldn't even help but ask him a question about the Wu-Tang album?
Or we can even talk about the purchase of is it Wu-Tang Clan? Is that the name of the album? Name of the group?
On the advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and respectfully decline to answer your question.
Y'all just wanted to hear that album, didn't you? It's the only reason you got him there, innit? And whilst all of this was some hilarious content more at home on Chappelle's show than CNBC, the whole media circus around this didn't do Shkreli's reputation any favours. He caught a lot of shit for his behaviour during this appearance, and since the mainstream media love nothing more to reduce actual human beings with complicated lives and drives to nothing more than a simple soundbite, from then on, he was forever known as Pharma Bro, the poster boy for corporate greed and probably the most disappointing superhero in existence. Quick, somebody's taken too many Zans! We need Pharma Bro! But Shkreli's awful media persona was really a monster of his own making. Sometimes he used these interviews to make wisecracks and perfect his internet troll persona.
Harambe, who is the gorilla that was killed at the Cincinnati Zoo.
And whenever he was at home online, he was doing as much as he could to fight the trolls with even more trolling, constantly being a clown on social media, and doing anything that he could to keep his name ringing in these tweets. This led to an iconic moment where fellow connoisseur of stupid haircuts, internet comment Eric, went back and forth with Shkreli on Twitter.
Do they have little marker lines on a door sill at your office to show how much you've been growing? Oh, you're like an internet comedian, that's cool. Yeah, and you're an evil little shit CEO of a pharmaceutical company. Go fuck yourself. At Commenticate, no, I refuse. Haha, okay. Hope you get that same response next time you ask someone to grab something off the hard-to-reach shelf at the grocery store.
Now, as a business fanatic, and also somebody that just really likes to look deep into both sides of a story, if you read a little bit further than the headlines around Shkreli, he definitely does have some redeeming points. He said in numerous interviews that the price increase is designed to hit insurance companies and big retailers because they are the ones with deep pockets. He's reiterated many times that patients without the drug are offered it for $1 through a patient access program. And in a speech at Harvard, he actually explained that out of 2,000 people that actually need this drug, only 600 of them pay full price and 1,400 get it for free or cheap.
So only 600 people pay for Daraprim. Their insurance covers it and the copay is $20. 1,400 people get it for free. I wish no one got it for free, but the rules are that they get it for free. This is why I saved this kid's life. I read the news story and basically just jumped into action to make sure that through back couriers and rural Venezuela, this kid could get the medicine. And if you want to read the story, Karina did a great job documenting our odyssey to save one guy's life. This is my disease. I say that not because I have it, but because I know almost everyone that does.
So let's be real, right? This guy's a businessman, and the pharma business is the pharma business. You think that Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and GlaxoSmithKline aren't doing exactly the same thing on a much bigger scale? He got into the pharma business to make money, and he's not raising the price of things for a laugh or because he's evil. He's buying obscure drugs that have been on the market for decades, repurposing them for a more efficient use, and charging the most he can get away with. That's capitalism, baby, and if you think the American healthcare system's fucked, well, that's a whole other story. And he's made it clear over and over again that it's his ambition to use the profits he made from that price increase to develop other, hopefully life-saving drugs, which is essentially an objectively good thing.
We sell our drugs for $1 to the government, but we sell our drugs for $7.50 a pill to Walmart, to ExxonMobil, to all these big companies, and they pay full price because fuck them, why shouldn't they? And if I take that money and I'm using it to do research for dying kids, I think I'm a hero, let alone evil. You know, for Daraprim to cost more money, fine. You know, if that's the price I have to pay to find a new medicine for a dying kid, I'll raise it even more. You know, what do I care?
But even though we've looked at his side of the story, Shkreli's douchebag persona was one of his own making, so it's pretty hard to have that much sympathy for him being misunderstood. So when the Wu-Tang Clan found out that this pharmaceutical clown was the sucker that purchased their rare one-of-a-kind album, the Wu-Tang killer bees will be swords out, coming for Shkreli's pasty neck. Interestingly, RZA started catching public flack for having sold the album to Shkreli once the details of his Daraprim price hike became public. From there, he went on a press run detailing his relationship and having met Shkreli in initial discussions about selling him the album at Soho House.
The paddyweight guy's like, I think this is the guy. He's young, he gets it, he's a hip-hop fan. We meet in March, April, right? Soho House.
Our Soho House, of course they would meet at the iconic Members Club, where Kanye met Kim, Prince Harry took Meghan Markle on their second date, and currently where unemployed new media twats sit and have expensive meetings about projects that will never happen between cocaine shits. Anyway, RZA went on to say that he only found out about Shkreli's background when he was sitting at home watching Bill Maher, and was shocked to see Shkreli's face come on the screen and Bill Maher begin to roast him for his dodgy business practices.
And Bill Maher comes on, right? And Bill Maher, I love him, he's a funny dude, right? He comes on and he goes, hey, you guys hear about this scumbag? And it's Martin Shkreli. I'm like, and he goes through the whole story. I'm like, wait a minute. Hey, baby, that's the guy that bought the album. She's like, what? What you mean? I said, that's the guy. And from that day forth, it just got worse and worse and worse as far as his reputation, Hillary Clinton, the hike, the pill hike, all those things. But if I was aware of that, you know what I mean, I may have a very different approach to putting that in his hand. But it was afterwards, and it was a shock to me.
But to his credit, once Shkreli's identity as the buyer emerged amid his scandal, everyone was pissed, and RZA made a public statement saying they agreed the deal before Shkreli's business practices came to light, and when they did find out about Shkreli, they decided to give a significant portion of the proceeds to charity, including the Children's Literacy Society, the Hip Hop Chess Foundation, and cancer misinformation group The Truth About Cancer, which is handy because that last one kind of offsets any of the lives that Shkreli saved with his expensive drugs. This incident was followed by a slightly more tongue-in-cheek move by RZA, referencing a potential caper with Bill Murray on Twitter, prompting a very Wu-Tang reply from Shkreli himself. Now apparently all of the public talk about business practices had started rubbing Shkreli up the wrong way, and this led to him bringing the ruckus, lashing out at RZA and the Wu-Tang Clan publicly for talking shit behind his back.
You know, the guy says before his business practices came to light. The fuck does that mean? I fucking make money, that's what I do. That's how I can fucking afford a $2 million album. Meanwhile, before his business practices came to light, what do you think I do? Bake cookies? No, motherfucker, I sell drugs.
He said he'd put a big check in their pocket and he was frustrated that they were turning on him. He said he didn't like the RZA talking shit behind his back. He urged the Wu to put some respect on his name. And he even said that the RZA should shut the fuck up. That's some big disrespect right there. However, RZA managed to keep it pretty classy, outlining his feelings on Shkreli with a slightly cooler head in a Bloomberg interview where he was read live some of Shkreli's threats and insults.
That's a little hostile, but what could backfire from creating a piece of art, having an idea, and to see it grow into fruition? As far as me being arrogant, it depends on what day you catch me, baby.
However, the rift between the RZA and Martin Shkreli would be nothing compared to the emerging beef with the rap game's Robert Downey Jr., Ghostface Killah. On January 22nd, Ghostface came out calling Martin Shkreli a shithead and saying that he should release their album.
Yeah, shithead brought it. You know what I mean?
Martin Shkreli.
Yeah, no, he's like this, because you don't take some AIDS pill that you have for, I guess, for $7 and then make it like $800.
Yeah, that's what
you know what I mean? You don't do that like that. I don't care if you brought the Wu-Tang, whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Would you like the CD out in the public?
Of course.
What
you gonna hold it for 88 years for?
Well, Shkreli responded on Twitter, roasting Ghostface for being broke and calling him a non-profit rapper, suggesting his last 5 albums sold less than 1 unit. Ending his tirade with the savage burn, calls himself Iron Man but sounds rusty as fuck. Brutal. In response to Shkreli's comments on Twitter, Ghostface called Shkreli a Michael Jackson nose-looking motherfucker, while showing off the most unflattering phone wallpaper known to man.
This the man I want to be beefing, right? The Michael Jackson nose kid.
2 days after that, Shkreli replied with an iconic video sunning Ghostface Killah while surrounded by an army of rent-a-goons and threatening to delete Ghost verses from the album.
Dennis, I'm gonna call you by your government name. You're not a Ghostface Killah. If you ever say some dumb shit again, this album, this Shaolin, I'm gonna erase all your shit from this album.
Right here, man.
I butter your bread, you understand me?
You be a ghost for real, motherfucker.
He asked for a written apology, specifically not written in crayon.
I expect you to write me a written apology from the heart. This
Not a crane's neither, mother.
crayons.
And he reiterated that threat on Twitter the same day. But to make matters worse, the next week, Shkreli popped up in an interview on Fox Business and decided to diss Ghostface once again, saying that the Ghostface killer himself should be afraid of Shkreli.
And you're not afraid to be getting involved in the, I mean, this is like a serious group that is out to get you.
I think he should be afraid.
What are you going to do?
That's all I'll say.
This threat clearly didn't get under the skin of the Ghostface killer, because he continued roasting him in a long-ass YouTube video of his own while holding what I can only believe to be an AK-4.7.
This is the guy right here that planned on challenging me. The man with the 12-year-old body. This who he be. His name is Shkreli right there. When y'all see him, you know what I mean? But you know, I don't even know how it came to this like this. It's Ghost vs. Peter Pan in like 2016. You know what I mean? All he can do right now is just try to fly away in front of my face, man.
He then decided to give Shkreli a taste of Ghostface's female goon squad, which to be honest does look a little bit ropey since he's had to downgrade from $250 to $25 hookers.
Yeah, you know what? These is my goons, Martin. Where you at, Martin? Where you at, baby?
Martin?
Tell us motherfucker something.
But if that wasn't strange enough, following that bizarre outburst, somebody had the bright idea to interview Ghostface about this incident in a Fox Business exclusive. Because apparently this is the level of journalism that Fox Business are on.
Joining me right now in a Fox Business exclusive is Ghostface Killer.
He has no respect for life.
Honestly, the whole thing at this point is just completely baffling, and everything reached crescendo point when Shkreli appeared on the most hip-hop radio show in the game, The Breakfast Club.
The guy was taking shots at me. In the hip-hop game, as we all know, it's not easy to be on the receiving end of those things without jumping back.
But you're not hip-hop, you're...
Whatever.
So he basically went there and said that he was only firing shots at Ghostface because Ghostface had fired shots at him, and that he is not one to let a violation slide. Though to be fair, he did clarify that those were real goons in the video.
So you're not really having goons that you don't really want.
I have goons for real, but you know, it's me.
And this essentially was the final big moment in that beef. But the Breakfast Club interview was illuminating for other reasons. One standout moment was the incredible revelation that his interest in the Wu-Tang Clan had come from a love of that classic Wu-Tang financial sketch from Chappelle's Show.
When they had the Wu-Tang financial skit on the
Yes,
Chappelle Show.
classic.
That was a classic, and it really, quite frankly, I think it did a lot for Wu-Tang, it did a lot for rap, it did a lot for a new audience, because we looked at it and we were like, this is actually how a lot of us talk and act in finance.
It's time to enter the 36th chamber and step to the Wu-Tang Financial.
You need to diversify your bonds, nigga.
And he continued to prove his hip-hop credentials to the world, reminding everybody that he had gone to great efforts to try and bail Bobby Shmurda out of jail, and at one point even wanted to share a goddamn cell with GS9 members.
Were you really trying to bail out Bobby?
I would have loved to, and I was in conversations with his attorney a day before I got arrested.
But now you can't do it.
Whatever it is, but I heard the guys in the cell next door talking GS9, they're like, talking about stabbings and shootings. I'm sitting there like, yo, I want to be in that cell.
Well, Martin, careful what you wish for, because while he wouldn't actually end up in jail with the 9, there was a spider-adjacent cell with his name on it following a conviction for securities fraud, because Mr. Shkreli is about to choke down a pharmaceutical-grade L. RZA eventually appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, alongside podcast-ruining compulsive interrupter Donnell Rawlings from the Chappelle Show. See, it's all connected. While there, obviously the topic of that mythical Wu-Tang album came up, and RZA shared the advice that he'd given to Martin Shkreli before he'd gone to jail to give out the album for free. But sadly, that advice didn't get through, and he was too wrapped up in being a supervillain to give that a shot.
What happened to you guys with that one album that drug pharmacy dude, Martin, what's his name?
Martin Shkreli. I did have a conversation with the gentleman, right? He didn't mind being a supervillain, just put it that way.
Yeah, and then it was like he wanted to
more
make...
of a Lex Luthor. I said, yo, if I was you, I would take this chance to do philanthropy, and I would give this away to the public.
And to be honest, RZA was right. I mean, it seems pretty obvious that when Shkreli became the farmer bro, he really enjoyed the attention and at a certain point just leaned in to his evil guy persona. And this was something he admitted in this candid Vice interview.
Almost it became a thing where I wanted to agree to do it, like participate in it and say, oh yeah, I am evil. Let me be the bad guy. And I started doing funny and fun stuff that maybe even extended that concept of, yeah, sure, I'm evil. I'll be the Bond villain, but the reality is, you're talking to someone that cares deeply about helping people's lives.
Problem is, when you're up against the mainstream media reducing everything to a headline, the nuance of your wrestling, hip-hop, Lex Luthor-style persona is kind of missed by everybody. And I tell you what, one clan of people who didn't appreciate his antics were the SEC, the Securities and Exchange clan, Commission. Now, everyone knew that Shkreli was the farmer douche who rose the price of Daraprim, but ironically, it was dodgy dealings in his hedge fund days that ended up catching up to him once he'd become public enemy #1. Turns out his hedge fund dealings weren't always going to plan. In 2007, his early fund, Elea, was successfully sued by the Lehman Brothers for failing to pay the losses that Shkreli had racked up, taking the wrong position and betting on a broad market decline. But then, as we all know, in a spectacular turn of fortune, the financial crisis came and the Lehman Brothers were completely wiped out before they could enforce the $2.3 million debt that Shkreli owned. I mean, that's some big short shit right there, only everyone in that film was way more handsome than Shkreli. Though for the record, Shkreli did state in his Harvard speech that once the Lehman Brothers went under, somebody did buy that debt and he did end up paying it off in the end.
Somebody bought that debt, and they said, I saw you in Business Week, so I bought the debt from Lehman Brothers and I want my money. And I said, this is 8 years later. And so I ended up having to pay them anyway.
And so after that gargantuan L, Shkreli spent a few years getting back on his feet. But it wouldn't last for long, because in 2011, when he was running his new firm, MSMB Capital, he had another short position that went wrong, racking up $7 million in debt. He took a position that a company called Orexigen Therapeutics would go into decline after their drug Contrave was refused approval by the FDA. However, down the line, when that company started recovering, MSMB Capital started hemorrhaging cash, and apparently Shkreli's whole fund became insolvent. And it was at this point that Shkreli actually started that new company Retrofin under the umbrella of MSMB Healthcare, also an owner of his old MSMB Capital company that was in the hole. Apparently, Shkreli offered investors in his past company that had gone under cash or shares in the new parent company. And at least for a little while, things had been running smoothly, until in 2014 it seemed that board members at the company got wise to what was going on, abruptly firing Shkreli from the firm that he started. And a year later, Retrofin were making an official SEC complaint against Martin Shkreli. They alleged that Shkreli had created MSMB Healthcare and its subsidiary Retrofin just so that he could continue trading after MSMB Capital became insolvent, eventually taking Retrofin public through an unusual reverse merger with an already publicly listed company called Desert Gateway, solely to access cash that he could then use to placate all of his investors that had lost money in the MSMB Capital Fund. Well, I guess he's as good as protecting his investments as he is at protecting his neck, because on December 17th, 2015, Shkreli was arrested under federal indictment for securities fraud. They accused him of running a Ponzi-like scheme where he was paying back his hedge fund losses with money from his new company that he had managed to take public through this strange reverse merger. And it's worth pointing out at this point that this was not the same company, Turing Pharmaceuticals, which he started after all of this, where he raised the price of Daraprim. Separate thing. But in the face of these serious charges, Shkreli did probably the most hip-hop thing you could possibly do in this situation. Hired the same lawyer that got P. Diddy off of that gun charge with Sean, Benjamin Brafman. But unfortunately, Shkreli couldn't even keep himself out of trouble in the run-up to the trial either. He was constantly berating the prosecutors in the case from New York's Eastern District, calling them junior varsity and suggesting that they were inferior to their counterparts over in the Southern District. Well, naturally, these kind of antics only seemed to piss off the judge and the prosecutors, who were eager to throw the book at Shkreli. Now, there were 8 counts that were leveled against Shkreli at this trial, and he ended up getting found guilty of 3 of those counts and not guilty of 5 of them. And so without going into too much boring detail, what this essentially means as far as the courts is concerned is that Shkreli did lie and he did mislead investors, but no one actually made a loss in the end. It basically means that while Shkreli isn't the Charles Ponzi type, robbing Peter to paint Paul like prosecutors were trying to paint him as, but what he really was a hotshot farmer CEO douche, ignoring all of the rules, blowing his investors' money on risky trades, and from there doing everything he could, including breaking the law, to try and put back the money he lost in their pockets. And in some ways, is that not who you want managing your money? In fact, apparently, in one case, one of his investors received a $2.7 million profit on an initial investment of $300,000, despite the fact that it did take them years more than they were expecting to get their money back out of the fund. And so even though he got a guilty verdict on 3 out of 8 counts, ultimately painting him as a guilty criminal, a defiant Shkreli still took this as a W and stayed focused on the fact that no loss was proven and that he'd managed to beat the biggest charges of the case.
We're, I think, delighted in many ways with this verdict. Count 7 was the government's attempt to theorize that robbed Peter to pay Paul, and the jury has spoken conclusively that Retrofin was not defrauded in this case. My investors made 3 to 5 times their money without any aid of any settlement agreement. Some made 10 times or more than that.
However, unfortunately for Shkreli, that W turned into an L real quick after Shkreli tweeted that he was offering $5,000 for anybody who could get him Hillary Clinton's hair, a tweet that the judge perceived as solicitation to assault, even though apparently this post was preceded by joking ones where he'd said that he was going to clone Hillary Clinton. He tried to backtrack saying that this was satire and apologizing, but it didn't work. He was hauled back to jail with his bail revoked to await sentencing. And eventually, he was sentenced to serve 7 years in jail and forfeit $7.3 million in assets. And so you know what that means? Wu-Tang is forever, baby! Now, even before Shkreli was hauled off to jail, there was a lot of speculation about the fate of this legendary album. In a Vice interview, he mused on potentially destroying it.
I could see myself in a place where I break it, you know, and I've seriously considered that. Or just snap it in half and bury the remains of it so no one tries to reconstruct it. And then I've seen a world where I give it away for free. And I've seen a world where I charge for it or something like that. Or who knows, maybe the feds will own it soon. But
though later bizarrely saying on Twitter that if Donald Trump won the election, he would release the album along with other unreleased music that he owned for free. But alternatively, if Hillary won the election, he would smash the album. Now, as we all know, Trump won the election, and while Martin wasn't actually allowed to leak the entire album due to contract restrictions, he kept good to his promise and played the first 2 tracks of it in a live stream. Now, I actually gave this a lot of thought. The contract terms say that it's not allowed to be commercialized by Martin Shkreli for 88 years. So therefore, putting that album into the Content ID system on YouTube in order to make money off of it by copyright striking this video would be considered a breach of the terms of contract. And so I'm pretty sure that that means that this is probably one of the very few occasions where I can actually play you some goddamn music.
So I actually have a contract with the Wu-Tang Clan where I'm not allowed to do this. Obviously I own the music and I bought it and I paid a lot of money for it. In many ways the contract shouldn't matter that much, but I am a man of my word. I played a little bit of it. I'm also a man of my word. I got to keep my word to them too. But let me play at least a little bit of it now. Let's see. Yeah, you know me both through the links.
Originally, the Wu-Tang were an offshoot of Shaolin. They still like to think that they are better than us.
Yeah. Welcome. Time to shoot back down to the 36 chambers. The 36 chambers of death. Home of Wu-Tang Clan. WTC. I'll tell you this. All my liquid sword niggas. All my Cuban link niggas. Tikal niggas. Who was riding through the darkness with us. This is one official right here, I'm telling you that. Keep it 2000 with y'all. Flashback, nigga, return to the guillotine. Poisonous darts, shattering swords, nigga. Cutting heads off strictly, word to my mother. Yes indeed, yes indeed. So we gonna hold court. Sit back, relax. Light your blunts, niggas. And listen. Once upon a time in Shaolin, the saga continues.
Hey, that was like $60,000 of free Wu-Tang for you guys there, you're welcome. And so the album went on undestroyed, though it did seem to get a little bit destroyed by Shkreli's cat Trashy at one point.
Trashy was sitting on my Wu-Tang album, and she fucking, I tried to reach out and pet her, it scared her. So it fell, that's what you just heard. That's too bad. Stupid cat. Maybe I just have backwards. I don't fucking know. Yeah, whatever.
Right, well clearly he's not a safe set of hands for one of the most iconic pieces of music history in the world. In fact, Shkreli even ramped up his disrespect and neglect for this mythical album by trying to sell it on goddamn eBay with a starting bid of $1, even going as far to livestream himself talking to eBay support on the phone because they kept rejecting the listing, assuming that it was a hoax.
This is a very, very rare item. I purchased it for $2 million.
Now apparently that eBay auction never led to a buyer, even in spite of the fact that RZA had even tried to buy it back himself, but was prevented from doing so because of the contract. In fact, when Shkreli was first captured by the FBI FBI, they tweeted out that they hadn't recovered the album, going on to be their most liked tweet at the time. Hey, good to see the FBI have their priorities straight. Now, I personally would have boofed that album and took it into jail to trade for a lifetime supply of cigarettes and K2, but hey, I guess Shkreli isn't as much of a G as me. And so, when his bail was revoked and he was forced to turn over $7 million in assets, it was confirmed that that coveted Wu-Tang album was included. And according to RZA, that album to this day is still sat in a temperature-controlled room in the Department of Justice.
Yeah, the reality of it is that it's now sitting in a temperature-controlled room in the Department of Justice.
And so, that is the tale of the $2 million Once Upon a Time in Shaolin Wu-Tang album. It's been a wild ride, and to this day, a lot of question marks still remain. It's unclear whether or not Shkreli still actually owns the album, or whether he's going to be able to take it back when he's released. Or maybe it might get auctioned off at some point. Or if we're lucky, Bill Murray and RZA might lace up their bandanas one last time and get it back in that caper we've all been looking for. In fact, there's only really one thing that we know about that Wu-Tang album, and that is that it's currently in the hands of top men.
Boom. Alright, big announcement. I'm closing the merch store once again. All of the designs that are up on traplaw.com I'm going to be removing at the end of the month, or what's that, 30th of March. All the designs will be gone. You won't be able to get them again. I'm going to get some new stuff designed. It's going to be fire. But if you want to cop any of the merch that is in the store right now, go over to traplaw.com. Go cop some of that stuff. I'd really appreciate it. If you broke as a joke and you ain't trying to cop some of my shit, that's all good. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting this far. It's all love, baby. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon gang. That's Claire ODN, Inuke, Otaku VS, Noah Carter, Jaden Chio, Candy Cantrell, Jason 4, Pyromancer, Griffin Fuller, Sean Anderson, Antonio Groza, Javier Gonzalez, Vivi, DJ Fred 100, Fabian Cruz, Johannes Zimmerman, Henrik, Henry Bryant, Josh Knappin, Niraj Shukla, Galib, Jessica Simmons, Chris J, Dylan Stuber, Tony Doe, Penis Bag McPenis Face, Wilson Psychedelic, and of course your boy Nessire. Thank you so much to every single one of you patrons for supporting me, as well as all of the other names that you can see on screen now. Your support means the world to me, and it just gives me that confidence that I'm going to be able to continue doing this no matter what happens with YouTube or any of that other crazy stuff that people get drama about in the YouTube community. I appreciate it. Thank you for your confidence in me, and I'm going to be doing this until the wheels fall off, baby, or until, I don't know, with the wheels. The wheels will do. Let's go with that one. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for getting this far. Follow your boy at TraplawRoss on Instagram, Twitter. I might start doing some twitching soon as well. So I'm on at TraplawRoss on Twitch too. Get at your boy, man. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all. Until next time, peace.